Get connected with Take Two Radio on Facebook or Twitter at Take Two Radio. For email updates on future shows, follow at Blog Talk Radio. For previous episodes, upcoming guests, and more, visit Take2Radio.com.
Hi, this is Dave Roundtree, author of Paranormal Technology, Understanding the Science of Ghost Hunting, lecturer, author, and paranormal researcher. And when you're not busy in the field, do what I do and listen to the Malliard Report with Jim Malliard.
The opinions expressed on the Malliard Report are those of the host and participants and are not intended to and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any simulcasting radio network or sponsor. All listeners are advised to make their own decisions.
It's the Malliard Report, yeah, the Malliard Report, the paranormal talk radio show with Jim Malliard as your host. See what lies beneath any paranormal activity. Go inside a world that others don't want to see. The Malliard Report, yeah, the Malliard Report. That it is. I want to thank everybody for tuning into the Malliard Report. My sponsor tonight is the Malliard Report Shop. Go over to italkparanormal.com, click Shop, buy something, whatever you want to buy. You don't have to buy anything. You can go check it out if you want to. Help support the show. Instead of, I've seen a lot of sites putting the donate button up there from PayPal. If you're going to give me money, I want you to get something back. Simple enough, I think. I don't know. I know the economy is horrible right now, and I know some of these prices on some of these items are bad, but it is what it is. And if you can't afford them, I understand. It is what it is. So we go check it out anyways. So I know that's the worst sales pitch probably of all time. My guest tonight is roy-condrey. Right? Yeah. Rob, you back?
Hey, yeah, it's roy-condrey. That's right. Hey, Jim,
Roy,
how you doing?
You just said people have called you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've got people call me Ron, and that's the name of it.
See, that was the last.
It doesn't matter.
I'm sure you're familiar with that. The last swing. Do you play golf? Because I play golf, and the last thing through your mind, like, don't hit it in the water. What do? Right in the water. Anyways. More worried about your last name than your first name, too, but that's okay. So, tell me, let's go way back to the beginning of Died In House. Where did the idea come from?
All right, so the genesis of the whole deal is I have some rental properties, and I gave a tenant. I usually go through a management company, and I'm in South Carolina, and it's really hot in the summertime, and one of the tenants' air conditioning went out, so I went ahead and gave her my contact information, so she didn't have to deal with a third party, you just speak directly.
Right.
And put the air in, and she had her number, and about 3 months later, I get a text from her, and I only dealings I've had with her because I rental property dealt with her to get her into place, but getting the air conditioning in, so I didn't really know her. So I get a text from her 3 months later in the middle of the night, and it says, "Did you know your house is haunted?" So it's a very unusual text, and I text her back, and fishing for information. Tell me more. What's going on? And as I was waiting for her to get back with me, I was just laying there thinking, I don't know the history of that house at all, or any of my rental properties, and I don't know if anyone's ever died there or what. So she never got back to me. And the next day I woke up, and the first place you go is online, and I started looking for diedinhouse.com. Started looking for like a home genealogy type site, Carfax for houses or something, and I didn't find it, but I found tons of people asking asking that question. How do I find out if someone's died in my house? And I found that, and the only advice I found was people saying, ask your agent, talk to the neighbors, check online, of course, and check your government records. So I set off doing that, and just that whole process, I started thinking, this is, there is not a diedinhouse.com, so that's how I kind of came up with the idea.
I was going to say, having tried that process of going to search the local government records, that's just not something you want to go out and do. It's not real convenient.
Exactly.
And plus, here's the other thing. I don't know how small the town is where you're at, but when you go in a small town and they're thinking, why is he trying to dig up who died there? It
right.
never fails. There's always like,
Why do you want to know that? It's none of your business anyways.
That's right. Yeah, so doing that, taking that advice, ask your agent. Okay, your agent, you can ask them. They can be the most ethical agent in the world, but where are they going to go? They're going to have to, it's not an MLS, it's not something that has to be documented by law. So they're not going to tell you if they don't know. They can't. And then you talk to your neighbors, and then that's a hit or miss. And if you are brave enough to do that, some people are too shy. Checking online, there wasn't anything out there really. You can piece it together. It's a real arduous process there. But then, like I said, go to your county records. So it really just takes a lot of effort just to get any information. And the easiest information to find is the owner of that house. You can go to your county online. They probably have a website or what have you. You can find the owner, but you're not going to find the spouse, the kids, the aunt that lived there, if you had roommates or what have you. So that's really what you have to do. You have to go through and find everyone that's lived in a house. You have to find out if they're deceased, and then you have to find out if they died in that house. So it's tons of research. And I just wanted to make something instant for people. We set off to create this. We wanted to make it a free website. But what we found out was, since the data is not in one place, it starts with us really doing that. We had to partner up with data providers, and these data providers charge us. So we really try to make the cost of a report as cheap as possible. And if I compare it to, let's say, a Carfax or backgroundchecks.com, those companies are great too, but they're in their $39.99 range. We're in the $11.99 range, trying to make it as cheap as possible in order to, cover our cost and grow some. And
truthfully, when you think about Carfax, you how far does a car go back most of the time? I mean, some houses are 200 years old, so to try to uncover and document all that information is more of a headache than a 10-year-old car. Right.
Well, with the cost, what we do is we say, hey, ask your agent. They're not going to have a problem getting you an $11.99 report. So, if you're worried about cost, just ask them. But you're right on a Carfax. People will run that $39.99 and to get the history of a car. But that's a big investment. But the investment on a home is way larger, and it's such an emotional investment. So it's the way I look at it is, if you believe in ghosts or other paranormal or what have you, of course you're going to want this information. But there's people that may not believe in the paranormal, and they're asking, so why would I care? Well, there's no law stating that you have to disclose a murder or suicide or a bizarre accidental death. And so you're about to invest in this property, like I said, it's an emotional investment. How would you want to find out that after you bought it, there was a murder-suicide there? How would you feel? Because that's how I came up with the idea. It happened with me when I did my research, that one house didn't have a death associated. But I found out my other property had a couple that died in there. And that's when I started looking at the laws, and I go, wow. And in that property, they died of a disease. You're really not supposed to mention the disease, but by law, you can tell people that they've died, but not, it's basically HIV, I'll say. But you're not supposed to say someone died of HIV in the house. But that's what I found at my property. I was like, wow, I felt like that should have been disclosed. And I found out in the law it doesn't have to be disclosed. And the law states that it says it's not a material fact. Death in a home is not a material fact. So, not the brightest guy in the world. I go up, look it up online. What's a material fact? And it's part of that definition says anything that can impact a buyer's decision. And I'll tell you what, if I got that information, it would have impacted my decision before I bought it. So I disagree with that. And then it says some laws state that the agent will tell you if they know, or the seller should tell you if they know. But how can you hold someone down on that? I didn't know that. You're really not going to have a case on your hands. So
it's just like the roof leaks. Oh, I didn't know. How could you not know? It's dripping on you right now as we're talking. I didn't know. So this would be much harder to say that you knew than that.
Right. Well, this happened to a lot of people, and it's been documented. And there's one story that I found during this research that I came across was on ABC News, and this lady, she was in California, and her husband died there, and she decided to take her kids and move closer to her family up in Pennsylvania. So she buys a home for $600,000. This is in your neck of the woods. So she buys a home there, and she's living there. And like within a few months, her kids find out that there was a murder-suicide in the house. She goes and talks to the neighbors, and she gets it validated. And what happened was there was a murder-suicide. The husband, killed his wife and then killed himself while the kids were in the house. The house goes back up for sale. It sits there. No one buys it. It depreciates, goes up for an auction. This couple buys it as an investment. And they sold it to her, and the agent knew, and sold it to this lady that moved there and didn't disclose that information to her. Well, when she found out, she cared, and she tried to get the sale turned around, and they went to court. And the judge acknowledged that she lost, $150,000 in equity, but there's no law stating that seller had to disclose that information. So she's basically stuck in a home. She's already grieving over her husband, and she's stuck in a home that she doesn't want to live in. So there's many stories like that.
So I've got to ask you a question. Do any states require that this is reported? Yeah,
there's the strongest laws in California, and it's 3 years. From 3 years from, I believe, the date you close, you have to, it's either the date you close or the date that was first shown to you. But it's within 3 years, you have to disclose a death. But 3 years and 1 day, you don't have to disclose it. Alaska and South Dakota are the other two states, and that's 1 year. You have to disclose it. I believe it's only violent deaths. Texas, their law basically states you don't have to disclose, but the realtors there, on their disclosure document, they ask for it. So it's kind of the reverse of what I'm fighting here. So that's good. The realtors are saying, hey, that's important information. You need to tell the people. But the law is not backing that up there. And then the remaining states, there's a few that say, if you know, you need to tell the truth. And the rest of them are just, there's really no law. So.
I know it's such a touchy issue with people, I'm sure, because they don't want to have to report their loved one having died in their house, or but it's something that needs. I think it's part of the house.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's this. Okay, so everyone has a different opinion. Personally, I'll give you Roy's opinion on.
Okay, go ahead.
If it was a peaceful death, okay, there's this lady, she lived there, and she died peacefully, I wouldn't mind that too much. And it's the violent death that I'd really be worried about. But there are cultures, Feng Shui and other people that are interested, and they would want to know because, it's, I'm not an expert in their culture, but I know that a death in the home has a negative energy, and they have to do whatever they do to cleanse that. So I have a lot of those type of clients. But the opinion, everyone has a different opinion on this. I just know that the stigma ties to the land, in my opinion.
Right.
So, for instance, John Wayne Gacy's property. So he murders 30-something young men in a home, buries like 26 in the crawl space. They destroy the home after they're doing an investigation. They're researching out of the house and destroy it, and the land sits there for 10 years. And the new guy builds on it after 10 years, and he's aware of the crime that happened there. But through time, so let's say in another 50 years, this house turns over and you buy that house, and you find out that there was this was the land where 26 men were murdered and buried. Would that impact you at all? Maybe not you, because I know you're in the paranormal, but I think that's information that someone should know.
Oh yeah. I was on Twitter a little bit ago. I was asking people if they had a connection to a family plot that was near a house. And I just find that fascinating because I see that a couple times around here, where the old family farm was, and then out in the front yard, there's a bunch of stones, and I'm like, well, you pretty much know where they died too.
Yeah.
Without doing the research. I mean, these people that were buried in the 1850s, 70s, whenever it was, you know where they were, or close to where they were when they died.
Yeah, and for me, like I said, I'm the more I'm in this business, the more open I am towards the paranormal. I would say before I started this, I wasn't. I don't think I've ever seen a ghost, so I couldn't confirm or deny it. But now I see and hear a lot more about it, so I'm a lot more open to it. But I know that there's an AP poll that I use, and it said 1/3 of Americans admit to believing in ghosts. And so what I say on that, I posted it on my Facebook site, and I said, okay, so that's 100 million people. So how many people believed but didn't admit in this poll because they didn't want to be labeled crazy? Because if you talk paranormal, even though the big push of paranormal these days with all these shows and all that, it's becoming more open. But you start talking about ghosts to the wrong person, they start giving this look at you, and you're like, okay, you're crazy.
I've got a story to back your point up here. I was at a flea market yard sale thing in a local town at the downtown mall. People buzzing around. I'm wearing my team hat, rocking. Superstar that I am. And I was talking to this older gentleman, and I walked away from him, and I came back by, and he walks over to me and grabs me around the hip, and looks at me right in the eye, and he says, I got to tell you something. And he's starting to whisper, and I'm like, oh, God, I can't hear him because of all this background noise, But he just stayed right audible, just right above that noise. My wife passed away 6 months ago. I see her every morning. And I had to tell somebody, because if I told my kids, they'd put me in the home. But I see her ghost every morning. It makes me feel good. But, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Don't worry. Don't tell your kids, though, because you're probably right. They probably will put you in the home because they think you're nuts. But it's good. Enjoy it, Yeah.
Yeah. Back around October, when we got a big, there's a media storm about diedinhouse.com. That's a perfect month.
Yeah, that's the time there would be one. No.
Right. Well, back then, I went to a Halloween party in my neighborhood, and I'm sitting there talking to my neighbors about it. In the beginning of the conversation, a lot of them were saying, I don't believe in it, whatever, good for you, and so forth. Of course, some believed, but they weren't talking freely until they had a few beers in them. But the ones that were kind of pushing back, eventually, they got into personal stories. They went to the grandmother's house, and they experienced something there,
right.
So they're kind of admitting some paranormal activity to me, and I was just sitting there watching it. After earlier, they were saying it doesn't bother them. They don't believe in this, what have you. So my point behind all that was, okay, so I didn't address this with them really, but I was saying, I want to tell them, you just admitted that you have some sort of paranormal, something happened with your grandmother that passed away, and you find that special. It is special. And, if it is true, because you're just admitting it to me, the next person needs to know that your grandmother is, there's activity in that home. I just think it's, but I don't know. I just think everybody has their opinion. Some people don't admit to the spiritual side, but
well, here's I know this is above your pay grade a little bit because we were talking a little bit before the show started. You're not really an investigator or anything, but you are interested in it. But is that a phenomenon that attaches to the family or to the house? That's where this becomes really interesting to me, because knowing those stories makes it interesting to know, does the phenomenon follow the family or does it stay at the house?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
I don't either. If I did, I'd probably be rich. If I did know it, if I had all the answers, I could write a good book. And no.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. See, I had an experience when I was probably 24 or so, and I was dating my girlfriend in college, and her parents. Well, this was a story with her. her father passed away like 10 years early. And supposedly her mother and father were getting separated, and the mother took her off to the grandfather's house. And while they were gone, this guy passed away during that time, like after a heart attack, whatever. So I meet her 10 years later. Her stepfather, her and her mother, they go off on this cruise and ask us to come stay at the house. We stay at the house. Same furniture has been there, when her father lived there and everything. So I'm sleeping. It was probably, 2 or 3 in the morning, and I just wake up. And I'm not scared. I'm not fearful. I'm just sitting there going, I just woke up. And I swear to you, I can't believe I'm telling a ghost story, but the bed shook, and like an earthquake, like a little tremor deal. It was like a second or two. And I sat there, and I looked at her. She was sleeping, and I couldn't help it. I had to wake her up. I woke up and I said, "Hey, did you feel that?" And I said, "The bed just shook." And she just opened her eyes and then smiled on that sleep. And that freaked me out even more. And I didn't sleep the rest until the sun came up. But I talked to her the next day, and she said that her stepfather, who this guy was, not saying that if you're a college graduate, you're this perfect person, but he was a college graduate at a pristine college, and he was like the president of his company before he retired and all these things. So he's kind of a credible dude. And she says that he experiences things, and her and her mother never do. So one day, I was fishing with this guy, and I asked him, and he wasn't the type, I'll talk to you about stuff. I'm pretty open about things. But he just gave me that look like, I said, Earl, I just gave the name away. I said, did you see things? And he just looked at me and smiled and didn't want to talk about it,
Right. Yep.
But he gave me that look like, yes, I do. And I was like, oh, you don't talk about it, but okay. So that's about the only thing I've had. And I even looked up the USGS, the geographical survey site for earthquakes. I wanted to debunk everything I could. There was no truck outside, a train going by, or anything like that. So I swear to you that shook. But
fascinating to think about. Let me read this to you. Iowa, this is from Buzzard Bob. Hi, Buzzard Bob, by the way. Thanks for listening tonight. Iowa law says you only have to tell someone if they died in your house if you ask, which is fascinating.
Right.
So ask.
So if you ask, so that's what I was saying. A lot of those states say if you ask, but you can ask all day long. They have to know.
Right.
Right.
Oh, hold on, let me erase this chocolate on the floor. No, I have no idea.
Right. Exactly. Someone died in his house? No. So, what our report contains is we're instantly providing you, you're really getting 2 reports and some manual research for $11.99. So what happens is you buy this report, it goes out and it sees if it finds a death in the home, and then if yes, it gives you that information. Of course, if no, it doesn't. But the next section, we know that we're not going to be able to find every death in the home. That's going to be impossible, because it has to be documented, and not all deaths are documented. And then our system has to find it, and our system's not perfect, and it's great, but it's not perfect yet, and we keep improving it. But we tell you if there's a death in the home, and then what we do is we find everyone that we can find that's associated to that address. Now, we don't know if these people are residents or just, most likely they were residents, but anyone that's out there in public records that's associated to that address. And then after that, in that list, we tell you who's deceased. So now, you ask your agent for this report, you have information in your hand. If you didn't, it would be just you go to Iowa and you say, hey, did someone die in this house? No. That's all they have to say is no, right?
Right.
But now you have a report, and it says, let's say we didn't find a death in the home. But down at the bottom, here's all the associated people. And let's say this guy's buying my house, and he asked me, did someone die in this house? And I say, no. And he goes, okay, well, there's this guy here, Tom Condrey. He died. He's associated with this house, and he's deceased. He's deceased, and he's out in the state. But he died. You can get a little more specific, and you can watch eye language and so forth. So that's what you're getting. And then what happens is that address queues up in our system, and then we go and do some more manual research online for you. We're also asking you, don't take this report and think that's all, that's just all the information we can find that we can get to you. And we're asking you, take that report, talk to the neighbors, talk to the agent, do your due diligence also. Still do some research there. But we're going to do some research for you online, and if we find something, we will email it to you immediately, because we don't know if you're using this information to buy a home or not. So we'll email it immediately. Then, within 30 days, because we continue to improve the algorithm and we continue to get more data, and data kind of trickles in,
right.
We rerun your address in 30 days. So all you have to do is log back in the system, in 30 days, and you'll see a second report. So you're getting 2 reports in a month and some annual research for $11.99.
So here's the goofy question at this point. You don't probably know exact numbers, but how many reports have you done since the site's been up?
Oh, man. I can look. I know it's...
just ballpark it. I'm just curious.
20,000 or so. I guess. Yeah, I haven't counted. We haven't counted in a while, but over 20,000. Just
that's a good number. That's a few. All 50 states, I'm assuming.
All 50 states.
So is there a state that you know has better information than others that really pops out to you?
No, I would say all of them. It's all about the same.
Okay.
I could tell you the states who purchase the most. We have California purchases the most. I would think most states have a law there, and realtors are probably looking for.
Right.
They have to disclose this. They're looking for all they can. And Texas is our second biggest, and then New York and Florida. So that's the top 4.
That's close to the number of states, the order of states they listen to me in. But somehow Virginia, I love everybody in Virginia because they love me. Virginia's the top downloaded state. I don't get it, but maybe it's all those D.C. people listening to me make sure that I'm not saying anything I'm not supposed to. End up on the do not fly list. Either way, they're downloading. I don't care. I don't have any plans of flying, so go ahead. Put me on the do not fly list. Oh.
Right.
Well, anyways, before I get...
They're in the top 10.
Before I get in trouble. So that's kind of where we're at now. So what's the future of the site?
Well, we haven't even been out a year, and getting a good response. The future is to continue to improve the algorithm, continue to get more and better data. On the point of the data, Carfax started out the gate with 10,000 records, and look at them today. We launched with millions of records, and we keep improving, and we also manually entered records in too. So that's a big part of it, though, is just to continue to get more data and keep improving our data in the algorithm. We also have some new products that I can't publicize just yet, but we're working on, and we're also interested in we're working on starting in other countries, the same Died in House product. So there's some big things going to be happening. It's just it's too early for me to give details on.
No, I knew that. I just wanted to kind of get the general gist, because you know how that goes.
Right.
If I didn't ask about the future, I wouldn't have asked about the past, I guess, was another way to put that. So I guess my next kind of curveball question for you is, do you think having a haunted house adds value or subtracts value to the property?
A haunted house? Well, I guess it depends.
Well, or have a death in the house, I guess, is what I should have said. Because then people suspect the activity, so. Well,
there is a, what do you want to call him, a stigmatized property appraiser. He's really made a career for himself. He's named Randall Bell out of California, and he has been called in for O.J. Simpson and also 9/11 and Katrina and all the big events. And he states that a death in a home, especially a violent death, can depreciate the home's value up to 25%. I say even more. And also can take that property up to 50% longer to sell than a comparable home. So with him saying that, and we see it over and over again, and I'll give you stories of it, but I believe, yes, I believe that a death does impact the value. Again, if it's a peaceful death, most people I think will be comfortable with it, but I still think they should know. There are some people that don't even want to live in homes with any death. But you know, you look at celebrities' homes. You know, the O.J. Simpson's, Nicole Brown Simpson's house, that sold for like $200,000 less. The house the mansion Michael Jackson was renting, it was up for sale for like $20-something million, and it took a couple years later and sold for $19 million. You know, Amy Winehouse's place over in the UK, she bought it. She lived in there 4 months, and then she died in the house, and it sold for conversion from pounds to dollars, $1 million less. You know, so those are just celebrities. But I'm sure a lot of people out there.
Well, you think that would be where the value is, because there's always people hunting celebrity collectibles. What more of a collectible can you have besides their house?
Yeah, but that's our natural thought. But you think about it, that's such a large investment, $19 million just to be a fan. And there might be one or two of those guys, but in his case, there wasn't. They did sell all the items in the house at auction and made money, but the other house ended up selling for less.
Well, those are some pretty big. I mean, Michael Jackson's a pretty big. I mean, got a big fan base out there, so you would have figured that'd be my test water case. If that would have went for the equal market value or higher, that would say there is value to it, or some value to some houses. But by the sounds of what you're telling me, there's no value, even in celebrity cases. So my death in my house will make the price go down. It just depends on who's buying it, really, and how comfortable they are. But I do think there's a market for haunted houses also. So there's people, you know, if it is a haunted home, you know, this is really a death in a home. I'm not telling you your house is haunted or not. I'm just telling you someone died in it. But I'll tell you, there's a story in New York, and this house is in, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Nyack, New York. But this lady, it's like a built, you know, it was up during the Revolutionary War, and it was like, I think served as like a hospital or something like that. Or at least people died in there, some soldiers died in there, I guess. Well, this lady was stating that it was a haunted home, and she even had a Reader's Digest article on her and all that, stating that, you know, my house was haunted and so forth. She ends up selling it to this guy in Florida. Doesn't tell him that it was haunted. And he finds out after he moves in, and he tries to get out of the deal. Well, New York's law at the time was saying that you didn't have to disclose that information. So basically, you know, he got denied. But then they went back to court, and how he got it turned over was she was advertising that home as haunted. So because she was doing that, and there was press that supported that, the house was claimed by the courts as a legally haunted home, and that should have been disclosed to this guy. So he got out of the deal. So just be careful, you know. Yeah, make sure you hit Google at least once in the house, I think.
Right.
Just because, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the word haunted anyways. I guess I should just declare that for my listeners before the emails start flying in. It just, I mean, it may be active, but boy, to say it's full-blown haunted, if Roy goes in, sits there and says, oh, pretty peaceful house, and then I go in and say it's haunted, well, one of us isn't right. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
So the industry, it's better to say active versus haunted.
In my opinion. Of course, I'm just one guy with a microphone, so what do I know?
Right. So there's tons of these stories. I mean, there's another big story I like to share is over in Silver Springs, Maryland, where his father heard some noise upstairs from his daughter's room, and he runs up there, and there is an intruder, and the intruder ends up murdering the daughter and the father. Then the house, they change the address. They sell this house a little while later, like a year or two later, to a middle school principal. And he's a single guy, and he buys it. He finds out after he moves in that there was the murder-suicide in the house. He tries to get it overturned. He can't. So he has his church come in, and they bless the home for him. He ends up getting murdered in the house like 6 or 7 years later. And so that's all in the news. They call it the homicide house. But so, you know, that guy, well, I'm not saying there's bad karma. I think it was just coincidence, but who knows? You know,
it's surely something.
He cared. Yeah.
I don't know. That's scary. It's kind of scary when you think about it, though.
Well, how about a serial killer's home? Would you know, would most people, how would they feel if they moved into a home and found out that it was the scene of like BTK killer, Dennis Rader, and that story? There's an article out there stating that he murdered people in his area in multiple homes, and when he was finally arrested and they got back into the press, people living in some of these homes, they weren't aware. And I've had people say, hey, I live in this town. This is like one of the biggest stories ever. And I said, well, I'm just going off this article, and they're quoting themselves in the article. I did not know. I wish I knew, because one lady says, it wouldn't have bothered me, but I would have got a cheaper price for this home if I knew.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the key there. One of the questions I've wrote down here, what's the use for all this? But based off the information you were just telling me a little bit ago, the price is the sticking point for all this stuff, because the house isn't at market value then.
Right.
I mean, besides all this paranormal fun stuff that we like to talk about here and there, there's an actual legitimate, I mean, if somebody, it's well worth the $12 to find out, because if you can save yourself $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, I'm not good at math, gang, but it seems worth it to me.
All right, well, think of it, it's a home genealogy search. Let's not call it diedinhouse.com. Call it home genealogy. That's basically what it is. I mean, we're finding you history on your home. Okay, and if I had a chance to talk to realtors about this, especially being like a buyer agent or something, if I was your agent, Jim, and you came to me and I said, okay, you're interested in this house? Well, let's meet tonight. I'm going to go get a bunch of information to you since you're ready to make this offer. So I'll go home. I'll run you a diedinhouse.com report. I'll run you anything related to that address and area. I'm going to get you all this information because I'm that type of agent. And I sit down with you and I hand you all these reports. I don't know what you're interested in. I'm just giving you everything that I can about this house so that you can be informed and make the best decision possible. So here I'm going through those reports, and when I come in there, here's a diedinhouse.com report, and so someone has died in this house, and you take it and you make your decision. So I think it's good.
Anytime you can have information about this or anything with a house or anything, really, if you're trying a large investment especially.
Right. Well, they say it's not material fact, and the material fact is a water leak or aged roof, but you can fix those things. You can repair. I want to know about an aged roof. I want to know about a water leak, but I can repair that also. I can have you repair it before I move it in. But you can't turn around the history of that home. Someone's been murdered in it or a death in a home.
I guess my next point is there's not reporting for repairs to the roof or whatever the case. There's material facts as we were talking about. There's not a report for that where you can.
Yeah, there's websites.
There is. See what I know.
Yeah, there's.
I'm sure they don't have everything though.
It's part of the. Most states, that's part of the law. You have to disclose that type of information anyway. So when you go to close, the buyer, you're buying my home, I'm supposed to disclose, here's the repairs that I've made to the house, or here are the things wrong with the house. I'm supposed to disclose all that to you. If I don't, and you move in and you find and you find out all this stuff's happening, you have a case in court because the law says I have to disclose this information to you. Okay, but with the death in home, the law doesn't back that up. So you can move in and find out, but there's nothing you can do. If it bothers you, I'm not saying that death in home impacts everybody. It doesn't. I do believe it's a large population of people, but it doesn't bother everybody. But for the people that it does bother, they should be informed before they buy this house. Just like the lady in Pennsylvania. She probably, I don't know if she would buy it or not, but she obviously wants to get out of it.
Well, obviously, there's a market for it because you told me earlier that a good solid number of people have done it, so people are at least curious about it.
Well, there is a market for it, yes, absolutely. People do care, and that's a good point. If people didn't, people wouldn't be buying reports. Also, there wouldn't be a huge industry, in horror films, Amityville, Conjuring, what have you, Psycho. So, paranormal activity,
Yeah, I was going to say, if enough people weren't interested, we wouldn't be talking about this now because I'm sure you would have folded the tent up.
Well, like I said, it bothered me when I found out, and I just thought, and I found out all these other stories of people, and I was like, okay, this is a good tool to work on. So putting it out there for everybody, and it's just going to keep getting better, and just want to get the word out. So I appreciate you having me on the show.
Oh, no problem. So I guess my next weird question is, have you come across anything extremely weird in these reports? Like, well, you mentioned 26 people being buried out back. Anything like that?
Yeah.
Like somebody sent it back to you and said, "Is this possibly right?"
Yeah, I have come across, being in this business, lots of stories. Let's see. Let me think of a really good one. Well, here's one that's not too. It's kind of creepy, but innocent also kind of. There is a home, I believe it's in Illinois, and there was 4 siblings that lived in that home, and they lived there most of their lives. And they were immigrants that came over, like I forgot where they came over from, but when they're like 10 in their teens and so forth. And they were educated and had careers. They never got married. They always lived together. And as I got older, they started disappearing. And the other ones were kept, neighbors would ask. They're sweet people supposedly, and the neighbors would ask, "Where so and so?" "Oh, she went off to see her cousin or whatever." And anyway, it ends up being the last sibling, and she's like in her 90s, and the neighbors liked her so much. They'd never been in her house, but she would come out and give gifts and whatever, baskets of food and stuff. So they kept telling her, "You need to maybe go into a care home or something," and she didn't want to hear it. So they finally called the authorities to come check on her, like a welfare check. The authorities came in, and they found her 3 siblings in separate rooms, just, laying in the beds, passed away, and the blankets over and what have you. They were there for years. The first one died like in the 70s, and a couple, like one in the 80s, and the other one was in the 2000s. But, she was a sweet lady. They took her, put her in a home, and I heard she flourished there for like 3 or 4 years, and she passed away finally. But would you want to live? Me, I wouldn't want to live in that house. That's just me personally. But I found that kind of odd. Also, there's tons of stories of hoarders where I find where they're like the mother was, found underneath rubble, like in a hoarder's house, like it caved on her, and she's been missing for years. There's a lot of stories like that. And, of course, all the horrible stories, like Andrew Yates' story. That one's all, a lot of these are on the news. But
like I said, does it get much worse than being trapped? And I mean, we were talking about violent deaths, but because you were saying earlier about peaceful deaths and you wouldn't mind it, but really being trapped in your own house under a pile of toilet paper wouldn't be my way to go out.
Right. And, like I said, the violent deaths, the crimes, that's kind of what, we think of automatically, okay, I don't want to live there. But there's the bizarre deaths or the accidental deaths, What's another one? A bizarre death.
It's fascinating to think about.
People.
Go ahead.
Here's one. The guy was, he went up, the father figure, the husband, went up missing. I'm not trying to remember what state this was. I should have been a little bit more prepared. But
okay.
He went up missing. And they found him. They didn't know what happened to him. The search parties went out looking for him and everything. And then years later, they did a renovation on the home, and a contractor found his body down in the crawl space. So basically, he went into the house to work, and for some reason, they may have looked in the house, they didn't find him, but he's been, dead on the house the whole time.
That's just horrible to think about. That's just horrible to think about. Like, I don't know. During this part of the conversation, I've been thinking about Weekend at Bernie's, dragging the people. That's largely inappropriate, but that's just, you see these people do it. You see that and you go, oh boy. Anyways, so okay, I know we know the website by now, which is diedinhouse.com. Go over and check it out. Where else can people? I mean, I know you're on social media because I think that's how we connected, probably. So where are you at on there?
Yep. So we have Facebook and Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So YouTube, I would try to put got some commercials that we're going to start running. They're pretty soon. They're already out there, and just media coverage. We keep it on YouTube. Facebook, I try to put as much information as we can related to the laws, stories of people finding out that there was a death in the home after they moved in. But also I have I don't know what to call it, but there's a section to where I post died in house related stories. So a lot of these intriguing stories that I was just mentioning, they're all there. You were talking about sites to find out the history of a home. So, I don't know if it's legal out there now. You get Zillow and Trulia and all these other sites, and they're great sites, and they tell you, basic information about your house and what schools are in the area and what's it worth and when did it sell last and all those things. And that's great information. But none of them tell you, if someone died in that house. So you can team the two up next time you go buy a house. Go to one of those sites, get that information, and that's good, and get you a diedinhouse.com report. Be informed.
You got to get out of there all the stuff you can gather. Okay, so I just got an interesting question from one of my chatters here, so I'm going to try to read this to you. Could you, Roy, possibly be sued by those trying to sell their homes and because of the disclosure of the info that decreased their value?
Well, our disclaimer states that we are not to be used for real estate transactions.
Okay.
In the sense of we're not to be liable for any of that. We're just informing you. We're kind of informing you of this information, but you can't. So I'm sure I can be sued.
Right.
But I'm not sue you for anything. But
well, it's all public record too.
We're trying to provide information, and do not use it to devalue a home. Do not use this to. We're not saying the house is haunted. So just go to our disclaimer and see where we're coming from there.
I just see it was an interesting. This popped in mind. I hadn't even thought about that. Of course, I don't think about getting sued often enough. I should think about that some more. But before I start shouting things randomly into this microphone, but it's anyways. Enough about getting sued. So I guess my kind of last question. We're kind of running out of time. We still got a few minutes, but. Is there, how do I phrase this? We talked about the actual valuation and the paranormal. Is there any other deeper thing that I'm missing that this can be used for?
Well, I think that, like I said, I mentioned earlier, I think it impacts everybody because, yes, there is a paranormal, but this thing crosses races and religions. Ghost stories has been passed on for since the history of time, I would say. And so, yes, there's the paranormal side, and there's the people, there's hunters, there's believers, just anyone that on that paranormal that believe in ghosts, what have you. Then you have people that just don't want the stigma, right? They maybe don't believe in ghosts, but they just don't want to live in a home or invest in a home that has this history, a bad history to it. And then there's people that may not care about that at all, but they're looking for a deal, So they can use this tool as leverage. And just like the lady at the BTK house, she goes, I wish I knew this information. I could have got it for a better, deal. So I'm pretty sure most people fall somewhere within those three categories. Some of them fall on multiple, But, I ask people, I remember when I first started doing this, and I would, talk to people face to face, and I go, would you care if you found out after you moved in that someone died in this house? And most people would say, no, that wouldn't bother me, especially if I'm talking to guys, right? No, that wouldn't bother me. Okay. And then I go, well, what if is it because you are assuming it was a peaceful death? What if it was a murder-suicide? Well, about half of them drop off at that point. And they say, absolutely not. I don't want to listen to a murder-suicide. Then you got people that say, okay, yeah, it wouldn't bother me. Still. And I say, okay, you test that. So what about your wife? What about your children? Would it bother them? You know, just like that lady in Pennsylvania. Her children were upset when they found out at school that there's a murder-suicide in the house. And my kids, we don't have a murder-suicide in our house, and they fear it, you know? So I asked that. And then I had maybe 2 or 3 people troll me, ask those questions, and they're trying to get on my skin a little bit. But they say, I don't care about any of that, and I wouldn't care if my family were upset. And I say, okay, well, how about this? How about your pocketbook? You could get a better deal knowing this information. Would you be interested now? You know?
So here we go.
Well, and that's where our cash can start. Yeah, I would like, you know, because they want to.
With the research you're able to do right now, does that include any land research, like if what it was used before the house was built, or the address, like if it was a battlefield or anything?
Yeah, that is a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. So it's died in house, but it's anything that's been reported on at that address.
Okay.
Okay. So anything on the land, but also most of our records, the many records we have, are from the 1990s when records started getting digitized till today. I would love to have records from the 1800s or further, but most of those records are in libraries. And but 1990s today, and it starts with us now. So imagine as it gets older. But also we're manually plugging in information. So we are getting those old records in. It's just that it's not part of the instant report, where we can just, you know, the algorithm doesn't go to your local library and open a book. So that's why we say...
And that's why there's people that need paid. That's why you've got, yeah.
Right. But, you know, you take this information with that, and you can take it to the library. You still do your due diligence. And I believe Carfax has a model where they say, you know, I remember I saw like the CIO to CEO, he's on 2020, and people were asking the questions, you didn't have this rec or this, you know, whatever. He goes, I can't begin to tell you how much data we don't have. You know?
Yeah.
We're trying to provide you all the information we can. But there's a lot of people that assume when you have a site called diedinhouse.com that you're saying you have all the deaths in home. I'm telling you right now, we do not. We have millions, but we don't have all of them. And but
well, Roy,
through time the database is going to do it.
Well, Roy, it's that time where I must shove you off unceremoniously, well, kind of unceremoniously. I want everybody to go check out Died in House, even if you don't want to get a report. Just go check out the site. And thank you for coming on.
All right. Well, thanks, Jim. I do want to mention that Died in House will be mentioned on Hot in Cleveland, and I believe it's on the 26th or one of these new episodes, so look out for that.
Oh, that's cool.
But I appreciate you having me on the show, Jim. You have a great show.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, so having gathered all this information from roy-condrey here about Died in the House, this is, I'm going to make an interesting point here. Oh, wait, go shop at themalliardshop.com. Go buy something, don't buy something. Next week I've got another sponsor coming on. Thank you for checking it out. So all I got to say, I don't want you donating money to me. I want you to go buy something and get something for yourself. Okay. Before I make to this point. Okay. Now I'm ready to make my point. So we heard straight from the man who does this on a real basis about property values and assessing and knowledgeable about this, that properties where people have died don't hold their value. They depreciate. Okay, why am I mentioning this again? Because of all these paranormal places that charge you X number of dollars to go investigate. That's how they stay afloat. Okay. And then you hear they want to turn it into a hotel or a haunted bed and breakfast or a museum or whatever the case may be. Okay? Why would they do that? Because A, the property value is already lower, and everybody and their brother knows that these places are haunted. So when it comes time to sell and make their money because they put millions of dollars into this place, because obviously they're going to go bankrupt or something, trying to make this transformation from haunted place to museum, hotel, whatever the case may be, they're going to lose money. They're going to get kicked in the teeth because everybody has seen the episode on TV where that place that former place, was investigated, or anybody with Google or any before you even get to this site, people are going to know. So I always laugh when I hear all this talk about, hey, we should turn it into this and turn it into that and turn it into this. Well, there's no money in that. The money is in bringing these investigators in and making the money while they can. Unfortunately, that's where it's at. So, while historic places need preserved, I totally agree and couldn't. How much of that burden falls on paranormal investigators and how much of that burden falls on the actual foundation or the caretakers of the place, that's for you to decide. But make sure that if they're saying they're going to preserve the building, make sure they preserve the building before you give them any more of your money. Seriously, gang, don't get ripped off. Just saying. Take it for what it's worth. I will... Nope, not quite time yet. So just please think about it. Take it. I know these places sound fun. Most of them have numerous reports of activity. But are they preserving the building? Is there an end game? Or are they just saying they're preserving the building, and you every time you go back, the big hole in the ceiling gets bigger, and eventually there's not going to be a safe place to investigate? These places should be safe for you. And they don't have to be heated. I mean, that'd be nice. But they should at least be safe for you. You shouldn't worry about falling through the floor or having the roof fall in on you, especially if they're taking your money. Until next week on the Malliard Report. Be good.
Well, before we flip that on-air sign to the off position, a quick reminder. For all things about the report, previews, and reviews, go to italkparanormal.com.
If you're looking for a radio show where all things paranormal go, well, tune in and be in the know with Jim Malliard as your host. Come and see what lies beneath paranormal activity. The Malliard Report. Yeah, the Malliard Report. Tune in and listen every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, right online. It's the Malliard Report. Yeah, the Malliard Report.
Get connected with Take Two Radio on Facebook or Twitter at Take Two Radio. For email updates on future shows, follow at Blog Talk Radio. For previous episodes, upcoming guests, and more, visit take2radio.com.